Ooh, lava explosions, dramatic collapses, entire waterfall disappearing. Hey, what's going on? Well, iconic landmarks disappear for all sorts of reasons. Guaira Falls, for example, used to be one of the loudest, most powerful waterfalls on the planet, more than 3 times the volume of Niagara Falls in New York. It was located on the border between Brazil and Paraguay and had this insane flow of 3.5 million gallons of water per second. But in the 1970s, the authorities of both countries decided to build the Itaipu Dam, which now supplies a large amount of electricity to Brazil. Renewable energy is great, but it became possible at the cost of one of Earth's greatest natural wonders. The Guaira Falls became covered by the rising water from the reservoir and disappeared for good. Hundreds of people gathered to say their goodbyes and held a proper local ritual of remembrance for the deceased in the memory of the falls. So next up, we have a Game of Thrones favorite, the Azure Window in Malta. This gorgeous limestone jutted out into the Mediterranean as early as the 19th century. It was born thanks to the sea erosion of a limestone cliff face. Between the 1980s and the 2000s, parts of the top slab of the arch already collapsed, and fishers wouldn't come close to it in their boats. But it didn't stop the tourists, who would still walk across the top, even though everyone knew the arch was eroding fast. In March 2017, during a heavy storm, the whole thing collapsed into the sea. Just like that, a 92-foot masterpiece of nature crumbled in seconds. Now, no one was hurt, but the island of Gozo lost its most famous landmark forever. Now, only underwater divers can admire the ruins. Our next destination, the pink and white terraces of New Zealand, were natural staircases that formed thanks to mineral-rich water pouring down volcanic rock. Once the water hit the cooler air, those minerals hardened really fast, kind of like how sugar turns into rock candy when it cools. That same process is still happening today in places like Yellowstone, with all those steaming geysers and colorful but deadly hot pools. At the White Terraces, boiling hot water full of silica bubbled out of a crater about 100 feet above a lake. It flowed down over around 50 huge curved steps. Across the lake, the pink terraces were a little smaller, but still amazing. Their colors probably came from different minerals in the water or even tiny microbes living there that added some flair. You could soak in the terraces like hot tubs, but make it 19th century and magical. Then, in 1886, Mount Tarawea erupted. Ash, lava, earthquakes, and the terraces vanished, either buried under layers of ash or sunk to the bottom of Lake Rotomahana. Hey, I got that right. Meanwhile, for over a century, people thought they were gone forever. But in 2011, someone said they found parts of the terraces under the lake. So maybe they're not entirely gone, but just hiding. Peekaboo. If you've seen The Beach with Leonardo DiCaprio, you definitely know this place, Maya Bay on Phi Phi Lay Island in Thailand. After that movie dropped in 2000, the place went viral. Before viral was even a thing. Soon, thousands of tourists arrived every day with speedboats, sunscreen, plastic trash, all that sort of stuff, which wrecked the coral reef. And in 2018, Thai authorities decided it was time to shut the bay down. After a 4-year recovery, Maya Bay reopened in 2022, but with big-time restrictions. Boats can't come directly in, swimming is limited, and the number of tourists is capped daily. Plus, they now close the idyllic location during the less popular rainy season to let the natural resources and ecosystems recover. So yeah, it's technically back, but the wild original version of Maya Bay is gone for good. Meanwhile, once upon a time, there was a giant cliff face in New Hampshire, which looked exactly like an old man's profile. See? There was a jaw, forehead, and even a nose. That was called the young woman on the porch. No, not really. It was the old man of the mountain, made of granite ledges perched on Cannon Mountain in Franconia Notch. With some severe freezing and thawing after the retreat of glaciers 12,000 years ago, the rock took the shape of that face, 40 feet tall and 25 feet wide. People first wrote about it in the early 1800s, and it became a symbol of New Hampshire. It even appears on license plates and the state quarter. But even with all that public love and many attempts to patch the cracks with steel rods, cement, and chains, the face couldn't last forever. Sometime between midnight and 2 a.m. on May 3, 2003, it collapsed and was gone forever. A geologic facelift, I would call it. Today, you can visit Profiler Plaza and see the recreation of the profile on the cliff across from Profile Lake. Now, the most isolated tree in the world stood alone in the middle of the Sahara Desert in Niger. The tree of Tenere was literally the only tree for 250 miles in any direction. For centuries, nomads used it as a natural compass that helped them cross the harsh desert. Its roots stretched unbelievably deep to reach underground water, and it was staying alive in a place where nothing else could grow. The lonely tree survived desert heat, wind, and droughts for centuries, until a truck driver knocked it down in 1973. Yep, the dunderhead managed to hit the only standing thing in the middle of nothing. Perhaps the driver thought the tree was jaywalking or something. Anyway, you can now see some twisted remains of the tree in a museum, and a metal sculpture stands in its original place. Now, another tree, this time not lonely at all, stood as tall as a 23-story building in Yosemite National Park. You see, at the end of the 19th century, two men managed to cut a tunnel right through the 26-foot base of this giant sequoia. It was all part of a campaign to promote automobile tourism and bring more visitors to the park. And it worked. The Wawona Tunnel Tree became a real tourist magnet. I mean, who wouldn't want to have their photo taken in a car driving through a big tree? But sadly, this beauty fell in 1969 under a heavy load of snow. It was around 2,300 years old at that time. You can still see it in the same spot where it fell. Look up the fallen tunnel tree. Now for a change, let's take a look at a couple of human-made landmarks. New York's current Penn Station does its job pretty well, but the original one was 10 leagues above it when it came to beauty. Built in the fancy Beaux Arts style, it had massive domes, tall archways, and elegant columns. It used to welcome over 100 million travelers every year, especially in its heyday during the mid-1940s. But things changed. By the late 1950s, people were flying more and driving on the brand-new interstate highways, rather than by train. Then, in 1962, the city decided to build a new Penn Plaza and the Madison Square Garden Arena. Just 1 year later, they tore down the original Penn Station so they could squeeze a smaller version underground. The New York Times called it, quote, a monumental act of vandalism against one of the greatest landmarks of that elegant Roman-inspired era. Now, back on the Pacific coast, the Sutro Baths opened in San Francisco in 1896. It was a 3-acre glass building packed with 7 different swimming pools, all with different temperatures. It had springboards, high dives, water slides, and even trapezes dangling over the water. And it could handle serious crowds, up to 10,000 people at once. There was also a natural history museum with Egyptian mummies and a sculpture gallery filled with artifacts from Mexico and China. It was definitely a one-of-a-kind playground, but there was also one major problem. It cost a fortune to run. Even during the Great Depression, when the owners turned the pools into ice skating rinks to try to stay afloat, the place still didn't make enough money. The baths finally shut down in 1964, and 2 years later, a fire burned it to the ground. Oh well.